Recessions can really change the relationships that different people in the real estate industry have with one another. And it can change those relationships dramatically. And what was a good, friendly relationship in good economic times can turn into a really adversarial relationship in a recession. And the worse the recession, the more potential is for those relationships to sour. And right now, it's early summer 2020. We're probably headed into a very severe recession, and some of these relationships that people have had, we have had 10 years of relatively good economic times, and some of these relationships are going to change, and some friendships are going to get ruined, and some people are going to get sued. And so I want to explain in this video, why does that happen, and what kind of relationships are at risk, and why do these relationships change, and who gets sued, and why do they get sued, and what does this teach us? How do we avoid potential problems? Not just now. A lot of it's going to be too late now for the recession that we're in, but and moving forward, as you see some of this happen, you're going to see it happen if you're in the real estate industry. How do you prevent yourself or your organization from getting in a really bad situation in the future? And there's certain things you can do in real estate to try and prevent that. And this is a somewhat controversial topic. I've taught this topic a few times, and people get very upset. I've taught this topic and been asked to leave the room in my talk early and leave the room because there are certain parties in the real estate industry that do not like to face the ugly reality of what we're going to talk about today. So I'm not trying to offend anybody, but it's important that people understand where their risk really lies. And in recessions, relationships change and risk increases. So if you're in the real estate industry, you need to understand this. So let's talk about what happens in good economic times. And that's what we've had for the last few years in the real estate industry. Times have been good. So everybody, as a general rule, everybody's getting along in good economic times. And why is that? Why are people, everybody loves each other? Why is that? Well, it's because everybody's making money. And the reason everybody's making money is as long as economic activity is good and property values are tending to rise, even if something goes a little sideways with a real estate project or transaction, usually everybody can get out of it whole. So let's say you get a developer, he buys a piece of property, finds out there's some issues. Usually he can sell that parcel for what he paid for it, and the lender's made whole, and the title insurance company doesn't have to cover any claims, and it's not ideal, but it's not earth-shattering. It's not the end of the world. And so in good times, good economic times, just about everybody in real estate's making money. So the buyer's broker is making their commission, the seller's broker is making their commission, the lender's agent, they're making a commission on every loan they close. The title company's getting paid for every title insurance policy they offer. A lot of these organizations are set up where commissions and bonuses are a big part of the compensation. So everybody's happy to see deals close. I'll just side note, in that kind of environment, nobody wants the surveyor to find a problem because that's going to hold up everybody's commission. So that happens. So in good times, everybody's making money, and so people are happy, and there's not a lot of lawsuits. So what happens when the tide turns and the economy goes sour? What happens in bad economic times? Those relationships change, and there's a lot more lawsuits, and I want to explain why. So here's what happens in bad economic times. One problem is projects more easily slide into insolvency or bankruptcy. And anytime that happens, anytime you have a land developer or a buyer that walks away from a deal, somebody's going to lose money. So the lender is going to lose money, or the title insurance company is going to have to pay a claim, or the surveyors, could be the surveyors, professional liability insurance company is going to have to pay a claim. Somebody's going to pay some money. If nothing else, the bank is going to be stuck with a parcel that they can't sell for the money they owe, the money that's owed them, that's owed the bank. So the bank's going to take a loss. So projects more easily slide into insolvency, and I've got an illustration that might help you visualize that. If you can imagine the project is a boulder, okay, it's a big round boulder, and that boulder's perched on a hill like this, but the slope is going up, right? What that means is even if your boulder's being nudged on from this other side here, these are the problems that are nudging the boulder. that it's hard for that project to roll into bankruptcy or insolvency because there's an uphill slope, right? Property values increasing, that's the uphill slope. So, it's hard. Most of the time you can get out of that parcel for what's owed. What happens in a recession is property prices start going down. So you get a downhill slope. Now you got this boulder. Man, you give it enough of a nudge and that boulder's going to roll. And once it gets on that downhill slope, it's just going to keep rolling until there's a bankruptcy or an insolvency. And so the trend line of real estate prices has a huge amount to do with the risk in real estate. And in an environment when property prices are going down or they're not going up, even if they're just stable or they're going down, it's much easier for projects to slide into bankruptcy. So what happens is these small problems that could be fixed or ignored in a good market now become what I call tipping points. And just go back to that boulder. A problem that a small boundary or land title problem or land use problem that wasn't an issue before now becomes the nudge that pushes the boulder over the hill, right? And it starts rolling downhill. So small problems become tipping points. And so what happens when a project goes sideways like that is people start looking to minimize their losses. So even if they know they're going to take a loss, they're trying to keep that loss as small as they can. And so one thing that happens is people get sued. People get sued because they're looking to minimize their losses or cover their financial losses. So I want to talk about who gets sued. Who does the suing and who gets sued. And let me give you a couple scenarios. So I'm going to give you a land development scenario real quick, and then I'm going to just give you a real estate transaction scenario with no development. So let's just say you've got a land developer. He buys a piece of property. He thinks he's going to do a subdivision. He's going to create 4 parcels. He realizes afterwards that based on some conversations with the public agency, and he gets a survey done after the deal closes, he realizes he doesn't meet the minimum acreage requirements. So he's an acre or 2 acres under the minimum, and he's going to lose a lot. Now he's going to have 3 lots instead of 4. On a lot of projects, that can be the difference between a profitable project and an unprofitable project. And so now the developer's, he's in a bind, right? He can't sell 3 developed parcels for the money that he's going to have to put in. So that's the development example. Let's look at an example with no development. Let's say somebody buys a commercial piece of property. Maybe it's being used as a restaurant, and they buy the property. Let's say they do a remodel, and the restaurant's super popular. All kinds of traffic in and out of the restaurant. The neighbors get irritated. They realize that the restaurant doesn't have the right zoning. They complain to the local city. The city looks at it, says, "Yeah, they're not zoned to do a restaurant on that parcel." They go in and tell the restaurant, "You got to shut down. You don't have the zoning. Code enforcement. We got to put you out of business." And there's political pressure there, obviously, from the neighbors. But so now you got this company, organization that's put money into it. They bought this parcel. Maybe they made some improvements. They've got a great restaurant, let's say, and now they can't run the restaurant. So what's that parcel going to be worth? Or maybe the restaurant's failing because they're in a recession, and so now they're going to look for an opportunity. This is their way to sue somebody else because they don't have the right zoning and get their money. So that's how the couple examples of how these relationships start to go sideways. So you got a project or a transaction, it's going down. Somebody's going to be insolvent. And so who does the suing usually? Usually it's the buyer that sues, or the buyer's lender if there was financing on the transaction or the development project. So if the buyer's still involved, in other words, the buyer hasn't walked away yet, he may sue to try and make himself whole. He wants to be able to pay off his debt, or he may have self-financed. He may want to protect himself or herself, the developer, from losses. So the buyer may sue. If the buyer's already walked away, so they've thrown their hands up and said, I'm going to stop making payments on my loan, because buyers can do that. Buyers throw their hands up and walk away. It's the lender that sues. So now, it's falling off my stool. Sorry. Now the lender's on the hook. So that's usually who sues. It's the buyer or the buyer's lender. So who do the buyer or the buyer's lender sue? And that's important. We're going to talk about who they sue. There's a second tier of lawsuits that can happen, and we'll cover that. So the buyer or the buyer's lender is going to sue. They're going to sue everybody. But as a general rule, the first thing they're going to do is they're going to submit a claim to their title insurance. If the title insurance company denies coverage, they're going to sue the title company. Then if they're smart, they're going to sue the broker. They're going to sue the buyer's broker. They may sue their own broker, the buyer's broker. they're also going to sue the seller's broker, right? Because brokers have duties to disclose and other legal responsibilities. So they're going to potentially sue the title insurance company. They're going to sue both brokers, the buyer's brokers and the seller's broker, or one of the brokers, right? And then if there's a land development project, they may sue the surveyor and or the design team, civil engineer, architect, structural engineer, geotechnical engineer. And sometimes they sue everybody. So that's who gets sued. Now, there are times when you have a cascade. So the buyer or the buyer's lender sues one of those entities, and then those entities turn around and sue somebody else. So let's talk about how that works. So let's just say the buyer's lender, let's say in this example, submits a claim to title insurance coverage. The title insurance denies coverage, says it's not covered by your policy. So they sue the title insurance company. Okay. The title insurance company turns around and sues the land surveyor that did the land title survey, right, that the buyer used to get title insurance coverage. So now the surveyor is being sued not by the buyer, but by the title company. Okay, or I'll give you another example. The buyer's lender sues the civil engineer because maybe there were some improvements that were designed and constructed over a property line, and then the civil engineer turns around, or the architect turns around and sues the surveyor that did the survey. So those are examples of how those lawsuits can cascade or waterfall. So that's a pretty depressing reality, but it is a reality. And so here's part of what I want you to remember, what I want you to take away from this video. In good economic times, everybody pretends to be friends. And they may even be real friends. They may be legitimately be friends with each other. But when there's hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars on the line, as there often is in California with real estate, friendships end. And here's the other thing that I tell people. Let's say you're a broker. I tell this to brokers. You're a real estate broker, and you've got a good friend down at the local title company, and you got a good friend down at the local bank. You send them all your business, right? So let's say you're friends with Ed at the title company, and you're friends with Maria at the lender. And you sell a property, an apartment complex, to your best friend Bob, okay? Bob finds out there's a problem, land title problem, and he walks away from the loan. Okay, so now Maria's on the hook for the loan. Okay, now, even though Maria's your friend, it may not, the decision by the bank, the lender, to sue either the broker or the title company, it's probably not Maria's decision. Right? That's a decision that's made above Maria's pay grade by somebody in the lender's organization. Probably the lender's attorney. You as the broker don't even know that person. They could live in a different city, right? And so it doesn't matter if you're good friends with Maria, if your kids go to preschool together, and if you've known her forever. She's not the one that decides to sue you, broker or title company. It's her boss that decides to sue you. Same thing with the title company. Title company denies coverage, right? The broker says, title company, I've known you for 20 years. How could you deny my client coverage under your title insurance policy? Well, it's not Ed. It's, you play golf with Ed every Sunday. Ed's not the one denying coverage. It's Ed's boss that's denying coverage. Right now, look, those relationships in business are important, but you need to understand, whoever you are, the title insurance company, the buyer's broker, the seller's broker, the buyer, the buyer's lender, that those relationships change in a recession. When there's millions of dollars on the line, that person that you've been dealing with for 20 years may not be the one making the decisions. Or they might be making the decisions, but now there's millions of dollars on the line, and even though they're your friend and your kids go to the same preschool, they're going to sue your organization. Or they're going to sue you if you're a broker or a buyer. So it's very serious, something that you need to think about. So, who should exercise caution given this fact, right? Even in good times, what can you do to protect yourself? Well, certainly if you're the buyer or the lender, you need to identify and fix problems with the parcel up front, right? You do not want to get stuck in a down market with a lemon parcel, right? Parcel that you can't sell if you're the buyer or the lender. Hire a good surveyor, hire a good land attorney, work with a good local title company, work with a broker that you trust, that's going to have your interests at heart, that's not just going to be interested in collecting a commission as quickly as possible. If you're a title company, make sure that you're working with a good land surveyor, right? Somebody that's going to identify the issues that you need to know about as a title insurance company. And if you're a lender, work with the title insurance company under a good local title insurance company that understands the local market, that's worried about their local reputation, and that is going to think twice before they deny your claim. If you're just choosing title insurance based on the cheapest price you can get and a land surveyor on the cheapest price you can get, you're going to have problems, right? So don't get into that situation. And remember, relationships change, especially in a recession. You need to be smart and you need to work with good professionals to protect yourself for when things go sideways, and they often do in a downturn.